Hey, hello everyone and welcome to Extreme Graphics Tech. My name is Angelo and on today's video I'm going to be talking about the 5600, the Ryzen 5 5600. And the reason I want to talk about this CPU is because, as you know, I think a month ago or I made a video about the Ryzen 1600, which I think is a very good CPU, all things considered, but of course you are not going to be able to play every game at least 60 FPS. Remember, this channel, that's the focus, okay? It's not that you can get 300 FPS or how much you can get, is how good you can play gaming at least 60 FPS when available. So I was thinking, you know, I want to bring better content when I analyzing some games. As you know, every time new AAA game comes, I try to make a video of testing many GPUs so you can have an idea of how it's going to perform on your own system. However, when it comes to CPU, I don't have that many. Well, that has changed because now I have access to my i7-6700K, which is a very old CPU that I use as a baseline. It's a 4-core 8-thread CPU, but also recently I got a 3700X, a Ryzen 3700X, which is a 8-core 16-thread CPU. And so I thought that it would be a very good idea also to have a 6-core 12-thread CPU. And yes, I know the 7600X could have been better on the AM5 platform, but unfortunately that means spending much more than I have and can. So I think this is going to be a very good middle ground, also because it's going to allow me to test how much those 2 extra cores affect the performance, because even though the 3700X has the IPC per core is less than this one, when it comes to multi-core it's faster because of the 2 extra cores and 4 threads that CPU can provide. So we can have a very broad and nice view of how games are going to perform on different CPUs and different GPUs. So we can understand if we really need like a 6-core CPU, if a 4-core CPU is going to help, or what else do we need. So I think that combination, and this being the latest also 6-core CPU that you can buy, not counted, well, you know, the 5600 family, because you can get the 5600X also, which is a little bit faster. But this will allow us, as I said, to have a view and also understand, because this is the last available for the AM4 platform. And I know there are lots of people out there that still has like a Ryzen 1000, 2000, and even why not some 3000, and maybe wondering if this CPU is good enough to do the upgrade, not counting the 5700X3D or the 5800X3D. This one is obviously much more cheaper, so many people may be wondering without having to change memory, motherboard and everything else, if the jump is enough. So that's what we're going to check on this video, and then I'm going to come with my conclusions. And of course we have to start with Dying Light 2, otherwise this will be an Extreme Graphics Tech benchmark. And as you can see here, I'm running the game at 720p RT Ultra DLSS performance, all of these trying to avoid the GPU being the bottleneck. And as you can see, we are talking about a 90 FPS average using the RT preset, which, as you know, RT uses more CPU, and we are using around 70% of the CPU. So I think it's a very good result for this game here, all things considered. I'm sure it will be much faster if we didn't have RT, but this shows that you can enjoy, even with RT features, this game at more than 60 FPS. I would like to test it without having to go to so large resolution, but well, you know, I don't have anything faster on my test PC. Anyway, here we have Horizon Forbidden West, again 720p, medium, DLSS, ultra performance, all of these as always trying to avoid GPU bottlenecks, and once again we are at 90 FPS average. So that's another amazing result, and we have that 6-core is quite good when we want to reach at least 60 FPS. NVIDIA or AMD, if you are watching this video and you can provide with a faster GPU for doing more tests, I will be more than open to receive any GPU for this situation. I'm using the 4060 for this because honestly it's like the fastest that I have outside of my main rig. Okay, so Ghost of Tsushima is a game, well, I didn't need to go to those extreme. We are using 1080p now, DLSS Ultra performance, and the game is really running beautiful. 117 FPS around of average. Normally, as you know, I play around 30 minutes of each game, and I show you here what is about the last minute or two of the game, depending on what I find interesting, because of course I'm not going to show you 30 minutes of each game, otherwise this video will last for hours and hours. But as you can see, the game is running quite good and the GPU is not causing any issues. There is no RT features here, so the game is just running beautiful, and honestly I don't see any problems with frame rate or frame time performance. Starfield is one of those games that we could not play at 60 FPS with the Ryzen 1600, but we can with the 5600, and well, it's not, you know, like very above, it's like 65 67 FPS average, but still, considering we were around 45 to 50 with the Ryzen 1600, I will say this is a proper win for the CPU. And remember, this is like one of the most heavy areas when it comes to CPU. When you're like in a cave or any close area, this is going to probably double the performance. So yeah, I will say you will be able to play Starfield at more than 60 FPS, no problem with the 5600, even if there may be some specific areas where it go under. As for Cyberpunk, well, I wanted to once again push the limits of this CPU, and I'm using the DLSS Ultra Performance 1080p with the Overdrive mode. Yes, Overdrive. And you can see the GPU is not at the top, but the CPU is like at 70 to 80% utilization. So I guess this is as much as the CPU can do with the performance that this game gives. And provides, even if the GPU is not the limiting factor here, because as you know, ray tracing is very heavy on the CPU. It has to calculate lots of geometries on the TBBH structure, so on and so on, so it makes the game run. But still, even though at this point we are under even 50 FPS, at some point the average was around 65 per FPS. So I will say this is a very good result for the 5600. But now, if we don't want any RT features, this whole thing changed a lot, because we're talking about 97 FPS. That's really wild. That's a lot of performance there. That is honestly mind-blowing, that you know, a 6-core CPU is getting this good in this game, and how much it has changed and been optimized over the year. So yeah, you can play Cyberpunk no problems whatsoever with a 5600 at a much better frame rate, I would say, even sometimes than the RT 3700X at some points, because you know the IPC is higher. So very good results for the 5600. Now if we go to something like Avatar, you remember that this game had some issues with the 1600, where even though it was a high CPU, high frame rate, above 60, there were points where it will go down to 45. That didn't happen this time, however. I have to say, every single time I played this, the game was just running no problems whatsoever. I never saw those dips that happen on the 1600. I do see the frame rate going a little bit choppy there, but the frame time is good, so I'm not quite sure what's happening there. There is no frame generation active in any of the tests, so I don't know, it's quite weird, the graphic, but I didn't feel the game was choppy or anything, and that one was another thing that was quite good. I didn't feel any of the game was choppy at all. Now, Alan Wake 2, well, I tested this one just because I did with the Ryzen 1600, but even with the Ryzen 1600, we proved that this game is not very CPU intensive, so there was no issues with that. However, even this game, even going to 720p, the GPU was the limiting factor, but still, we're getting above 100 FPS, which is good in my book, so I didn't want to test, you know, like testing or going lower that, because there was no point. We're already above 100. So if you have a better GPU, you probably will have more luck. And if you activate ray tracing, that is going to have an effect on the CPU, but not enough as to, you know, make you play under 60. What you need here to play this game is a very, very good GPU. Finally, I'm testing Hellblade II, because this is one of the latest Unreal 5 games and one of the most beautiful ones. And you can see here that this game is running at staggering 150 FPS with the 5600. Of course, 720p low preset just to avoid, you know, the CPU being the bottleneck. As you can see there, we are almost always at 95% on the GPU. So it probably would have gotten better if we had a better GPU. So once again, NVIDIA or AMD, if you're listening or watching this video, if you can provide me with something better for my test, I will appreciate it, even if I don't think anyone is going to listen to this that works for them. But anyway, this is all for the benchmarks. Now let's go to my conclusions. Okay, so as you saw, I think the first thing that this proves is that 6 cores today is more than enough to play all games at 60 FPS. So that shouldn't be a problem. But if you're looking for like very, you know, high frame rate, you're going to probably want a faster CPU, also with at least 2 extra cores. But if you are somebody who, you know, many games you can play a high frame rate, but are not going to be the majority, but you are going to get at least those 60 FPS on every single game without too much of an issue with a 5600, because this CPU is quite capable. And I bought this new for like $110, and you can get it on eBay for like 90 or sometimes even a little bit less, which I think is a little bit expensive for a used CPU, but I guess these are going to come down in price. So if you have like a Ryzen 1000 or a Ryzen 2000, this may be a good you know, a good jump from you if you want to keep playing at a cheaper price, if you don't want to change the motherboard or the memory and all of that. You may have like a Ryzen 1600 or 1800 or a 2600, and then you want to do sort of a jump. You can get this for cheap on eBay, or you can buy new and then have a much better gaming experience, because there is quite a gap between the 1600 and the 15600. So yeah, for my point, it has to be, of course, it's going to be price. It's going to be the point that is going to make your decision worth it. Is it worth for what you have? Route to invest whatever the price is in your country. As I said, here I can get it new for like $110, and you can get it on eBay for 90, but maybe in your country it's less or even more, but other CPUs are even more. So it's hard to say if it's worth for you and your own economy and your own situation. But I hope that this video at least give you an idea if you are going to jump or not. I would like to know if you have like a first generation or second generation Ryzen, and if you're going to do the jump or you think it's worth it. And if you have like a 3600, is it worth it to change to 56 in your country at least? I think that I wouldn't say that for somebody having like a 3600 or 3700 is worth it. I don't know. I wouldn't, but it will depend on your own situation. So as always, I hope you like this video, and see you on the next one.